Bonjour, Kinamagin and Ireland Indishnikas, and welcome to today's episode of Social Studies Explorer. Today's episode, Voting in Congress. All right, let's begin with today's text. We'll read the 2 pages out loud that you have in front of you, and then we will use a PowerPoint to discuss these pages here. And this is an area where you will fill it in as we go. It all comes down to a vote. You already know that the legislative branch of the United States government is the branch that makes laws. You've seen the diagram showing that Congress has two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. You've learned about bills and the long process that they have to go through before they become laws. Both the Senate and the House have to vote to pass a bill, and then the bill gets sent to the president for a signature. But wait, back up. It's easy to pass over the word vote in the larger process of how bills become laws. It's a very small word, and we all know what it means. But voting in Congress is about a lot more than just saying yay or nay. Each member of Congress has a power that nobody in the other branch of the government has, the power to vote on a proposed laws. Each member must make a decision about each bill, and it's a lot of work. So how do members of Congress decide whether to vote yes or no on a bill? It isn't a matter of flipping a coin, that's for sure. Members of Congress face pressure from all kinds of people and groups who have a stake in any particular bill. So there are a lot of factors to consider. Let's look at 4 big questions members of Congress think about when they're making this decision. First one, can we do that? The United States Constitution lists all the powers that Congress has. Congress is limited by what the Constitution says, and it cannot do anything that isn't on the list. So the first factor members of Congress consider is whether they have the power to pass a particular law. Here's a summary of the powers Congress has. Make laws about immigration, make laws about bankruptcy, establish post offices, declare war, raise and support armies, collect taxes to raise money to pay debts, defend the country and provide for the general welfare of the United States, pass laws about business that happens in more than one state, with foreign countries, and with Indian nations. And that's not all. On top of this, Congress has the power to make all laws that are necessary and proper for executing the powers on the list. This means Congress can do things that are not specifically on the list as long as they are related to something that is on the list. What do my constituents want? That's the next question. Constituents are the people that they represent. People don't just wake up one day and decide to go be a member of Congress. The only way to serve in Congress is to be elected by voters. If you're a senator, then a majority of voters in your state voted for you. If you're a representative, then you were elected by a majority of voters in a district within your state. Either way, members have one job when they get to Congress: represent the people who sent them there. This doesn't mean just the people who showed up at the polls on election day. It means everyone who lives in their state or district. The people who are being represented are called constituents. Next, what do my constituents want? So how do members of Congress figure out what their constituents want them to do? First, everyone expects their elected representatives to work in the people's best interest. This means working to pass laws that will help the people in the state or district, such as by creating jobs or protecting resources that are found there. Members of Congress also pay attention to the kind of people they are representing. Are there large populations of elderly people there, or a particular ethnic group, or a lot of people who are wealthy or poor or in between? Members will work to pass laws that are favored by large groups of their constituents. On some hot button issues, members get lots of calls, letters, and emails from constituents either supporting or opposing a bill. Members of Congress pay attention to these communications. Most members of Congress hope to get reelected, so they want to please as many constituents as possible. What position does my political party take? Like it or not, American politics is driven by political parties. Each political party has a platform, which is a written document describing where the party stands on almost every issue facing America. Each member of Congress belongs to a political party, except for independents, who belong to no party. While members are free to make their own decisions about voting for or against any bill, there's a lot of pressure within the political parties for members to vote a certain way. When members vote against their party leader's wishes, it's usually because they have a lot of constituents who disagree with the party on that issue. In a showdown between party and constituents, the constituents are likely to win. Why? Because those are the people with the power to reelect members of Congress or throw them out. And finally, what do I think? There's no point at which someone stops being a person and starts being a member of Congress. People who are elected to serve in Congress are human just like the rest of us. And they share something all humans have in common: opinions. Everyone has them. That's why they get elected. And often, a member's views will be similar to his or her political party anyway, which is probably the party that most of the voters belong to. Members of Congress aren't supposed to just vote according to their personal views and ignore everything else. But members' personal opinions are always a factor when deciding whether to vote yes or no. Putting it together, when it comes time to vote, a member of Congress will consider all of the above factors and probably more. They also consider what they've learned from groups and business industries that have lobbied the members to take a particular view about an issue. All that's left is make a decision and cast a vote. Let's bounce to our PowerPoint here. I'm going to set it up here. And again, the title is Voting in Congress. It's more than just yay or nay. So on your paper, you've got a couple different bills. The first one is Bill A, and this bill would stop mail delivery on Saturdays. Yikes, that seems like a big decision. Let's look at the four factors. Does Congress have the power to stop Saturday mail delivery? Does Congress have the power to establish post offices? The answer is yes, and we saw that in the reading. In deciding what days mail will be delivered, part of it is deciding what days mail will be delivered, part of establishing a post office. I'm going to go with me personally, probably not. But in the case of Congress view, it is probably. And notice the word probably and not surely, because it's not really spelled out. Therefore, Congress has the power to stop Saturday mail delivery. Congress does not have the power to stay out. Well, the answer is going to be A. Congress has the power to stop Saturday mail delivery. And then take a moment to explain on your paper. If you're at home, you can pause the video to write and unpause when you're ready. Factor number 2, would your voters support ending Saturday mail delivery? There are a few things you should know before you make up your mind. In 1957, Congress passed a law to stop Saturday mail. It lasted one Saturday. Voters were so angry that Congress passed a bill to bring Saturday delivery back. And if you saw anything about the post office late in 2020, it does get people's attention very quickly. Would your voters support ending Saturday mail delivery? Did they have email in 1957? Well, no. Do you think that would make a difference to voters today? I'm going to go with no. For this activity, let's pretend the state or district you represent has more older voters than younger voters. Older voters are more likely to still use the postal service. Younger voters are more likely to use email. And I kind of have a slight disagreement here, admittedly. While younger voters are probably less likely to send a letter via the post office does deliver a lot of the things we order on different websites, whether it be books or movies or, well, there's a lot of specific places that we tend to get stuff from. I just don't feel like name dropping any of them at the moment. So young people still do get a lot of mail. So do you think voters will support this bill? Mark it on your paper. Would your factor 3, would your party support ending Saturday delivery? Look at the checklist of values on your handout. Which value most matches the purpose of this bill? Cost saving. That means the Republican Party would most likely support the bill. And we know the Democrats would probably oppose it just based on what we saw in 2020. In your opinion, should Saturday mail delivery end? A few things you should know before you make up your mind. The USPS pays for itself with the money it brings in from its services. However, the Postal Service is losing a lot of money because people are sending fewer letters. Instead of using the mail, people are texting and sending email and paying their bills online. In 2016, the Postal Service lost $5.6 billion. Although I would need to check and see how much of that is things like pension and how much of that is paying more in employees and they're bringing in on sources. And stopping delivery on Saturdays would save the Postal Service up to $3 billion a year. So is it worth it? Should you consider other factors besides how much money it costs? Me personally, I would say, yeah. There's a lot of other important information there. There you go. Decide what you think and mark your answer on your paper. Don't forget to explain your choice. So go ahead and pause your video and unpause it when you're ready. Now you get to vote, yay or nay. Yay means yes, nay means no. And this is more applicable to in person. And we'll decide if the bill passes when we get to that in class. Bill B, increase the minimum wage from $7.25 to $7.50 per hour. This is a current topic, although $7.50 isn't the number that's being discussed anymore. Factor 1, does Congress have the power to raise the minimum wage? And what is the minimum wage? Smallest amount anyone has ever earned. It's the lowest hourly rate that an employer is allowed to pay. And the answer is B. Look at the list of powers Congress has. Does it say Congress can set people's wages? No, it doesn't say that. What power lets Congress do something that's not on the list? If it relates to something that is on the list. Mark any laws necessary and proper for laws on the list. Look at the list again. Is there a power that might relate to the money people earn at their jobs? Here's a hint. It's one of these three. Establish post office? Probably not. Pass laws about business that happens across state lines? That sounds reasonable. Declare war? No, definitely B. Businesses are the ones that pay people a wage. So this power is related to a bill about the minimum wage. Does Congress have the power? You already said that. Would your voters support raising the minimum wage? There's some important information that will help you decide. Some states have their own minimum wage that is higher than the national minimum wage. Some do not. So the state's minimum wage law is higher in the green, lower in Georgia and Wyoming, and equal to in places like Wisconsin, Indiana, and Virginia. And you can see that there is no state minimum wage in places like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, or South Carolina. Would your political party support raising the minimum wage? Which value most matches the purpose of this bill? Generosity. This means Democratic Party would be most likely. If you went with the money one, that would talk about Republican opposition. Although there is some current support on both sides of the aisle for raising the minimum wage, but the larger debate is to what extent. Should Congress raise the minimum wage to $7.50? In your opinion? Good, mark your papers. And now you would vote yay or nay. And this is more in the classroom as well. And the final one, Bill C, we'll continue filling this out. The government will give titles of nobility to some citizens. And that's things like Your Majesty or the Duke or Duchess, Prince, Princess. Does Congress have the power to grant titles of nobility? Is granting titles of nobility on the list of Congress powers? Yeah, I'm going to go all the way to C with absolutely not. In fact, that's one of the things specific that we don't do. Constitution specifically says that no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. So if the factor is no, well, it doesn't matter if we can pass it. Would voters support granting titles of nobility? Since not everyone would get a special title, do you think most voters would support this? Maybe in small areas, some areas, but probably not. Would your political party support granting titles of nobility? Let's look at the values checklist. Do any of these values match the purpose of this bill? Nope. It's just plain un-American. Should Congress, in your opinion, go ahead and mark it? Let's vote. There's one factor that matters more than others. What's it? The powers of Congress, your personal opinion, political party support, or what voters think? Yeah, the answer better be no on this. Would a bill clearly against Congress's power even make it to a vote? Well, funny story is, yeah, it might make it to a vote, and then it would immediately result in a lawsuit that would go to federal court, and this law would be struck down as unconstitutional. But there's plenty of history of passing things that are clearly unconstitutional. Would you vote yay or nay? That's up to you. All right, that completes tonight's assignment. You just need to turn your paper in to prove that you did it. If you're at home, just take a picture and send it to me holding up completed side 2. And otherwise, have a minute. Minwa, Bama P.